Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hi, everybody. It's Wednesday night, and hurricane or no hurricane, we're checking in safe here tonight, and it's time for Friends and Fiction. So let's get rolling. I'm Mary Kay Andrews, coming live from Atlanta.
I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey, coming live from Beaufort. Are we doing that? I like it.
I like it.
Great idea. I am Kristin Harmel, coming live to you from Orlando.
And I am Patti Callahan Henry, coming live. This is fun. Coming live to you from Cashers, North Carolina.
Right. And neither rain nor snow nor hurricane force, gale winds and floods can keep us from telling you that this is Friends and Fiction, 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories to support indie bookstores, authors, and librarians. Tonight, we're going to welcome Tracey Lange. I almost morphed to, did that thing.
You married them, put them together.
Yeah, we're going to be welcoming Tracey Lange, author of The Colonies of County Down, and Amy Runyan, author of A Bakery in Paris.
Yay. All right. But first, just a quick reminder to check out all the fun things going on in our Friends and Fiction community at friendsandfiction.com. We have a new, improved, refreshed website with lots of new content, and it's beautiful and very easy to navigate. So if you haven't visited in a while, check it out. There, you'll find links to our weekly Writer's Block podcast, where a new episode drops each Friday on all major podcast platforms, to our bookshop.org page, where our books and books from our guests are available at a discount, to the Friends and Fiction official book club with Brenda and Lisa, and to our weekly email newsletter.
On this week's podcast, Patti talked to David Katz about writers' communities and why they matter, and about the Kauai Writers Conference, where PCH and MKA will be teaching this fall. That's Patti and Mary Kay. And coming this Friday, Patti and Kristy will be talking with Helen Ellis about her novel, Kiss Me in the Coral Lounge.
She's amazing.
Over on the book club page, the group is reading Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, one of our favorite guests recently on the show. And she'll be joining Brenda and Lisa for a live online chat on September 18th at 7 p.m. Eastern.
And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter and check out our tour dates on friendsandfiction.com. Next up, we will all be together live and in person in Westminster, Maryland, about 45 minutes from Baltimore. You'd probably like to know when. On October 4th, to celebrate the launch of Mary Kay's Bright Lights Big Christmas, which is getting huge buzz and great online buzz, and everybody's talking about it. And I have to tell you, I can't wait for y'all to read it. So tickets for that event are available now and selling fast through the independent bookstore, A Likely Story.
Now, without further ado, let's welcome Tracey Lange.
Tracey is the New York Times bestselling author of We Are the Brennans. Born and raised in New York City, she graduated from the University of New Mexico, where Sean is, with a degree in psychology before owning and operating a behavioral health care company with her husband for 15 years.
While writing her debut novel, We Are the Brennans, Tracey completed the Stanford University online novel writing program. In fact, we had Tracey on our podcast in 2021 to discuss that book. If you haven't listened to it after you listen tonight, go back. I encourage you to find that episode.
So Tracy currently lives in Bend, Oregon with her husband, 2 sons, and their beloved German Shepherd. Her new book, The Connollys of County Down, was just released earlier this month.
Sean, can you bring Tracy on?
That's a great cover. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Welcome. We're so excited to speak with you about the Connollys of County Down. Please tell us about this fiercely loyal Connolly clan and how you came to write their story.
Well, for me, it really started with a fairly simple idea. Someone returning home after being released from prison and looking at all the challenges that she would be navigating and how it would impact her family, having her back in the house. So that's kind of where the idea came from. But it's very much about her trying to rebuild her life after spending 1.5 years in prison, and also trying to re-enter the family. And inevitably, her homecoming kind of kicks up lots of issues for everybody, and they have to sort of work through some of that together.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. There's just so much rich family stuff in there. This is so great. I'm excited to dig in. So, Tracy, your protagonist, Tara, lost her mother at a tender age, but through all the traumas of her young life, she has clung to her fading memories of the fairy tales her mother spun at bedtime, a retelling of the Irish folk legend Finn McCool, which I remember reading about in Frank Delaney's epic Ireland. I don't know if you ever read that, but when I saw Finn McCool, I was like, I know that story. So we would love to hear you talk about how you weave the importance of that story into this story of the Connollys, and also which came first, the legend or the Connollys?
You know, the Connollys came first, and pretty early on I landed an idea of these fairy tales, something that sort of tied these 3 siblings together. They survived a fairly traumatic childhood together, and as a result, they're fiercely loyal to each other, but there's definitely some unhealthy dynamics going on. You know, the coping skills that sometimes serve us as children and help us get through especially traumatic times don't really serve us as adults.
Yes.
So they're all sort of stuck in a way, but I love the idea of having this common thread that pulled them together. And as the youngest sibling, Tara can't remember the details of the fairy tale, especially the one that her mother made up about them and as the 3 siblings. And so that's kind of a question for her throughout the story: is what were our special powers? How did we come out of this fairy tale together? So yeah, I just looked at it as a sort of grounding force for these 3. And as I went on, they kind of took a bigger role over time, and turned out to be kind of a favorite storyline for me anyway. But yes, Finn McCool is a famous, and there's all kinds of tales about Finn McCool, including the
He's
one
the
that's in the book.
best.
Yeah. You could use him for a lot. So
Yes, you could.
I love the idea of her pulling him in, especially with her she has a nephew, and so yeah, that was the idea behind the fairy tale. It's just something to kind of bring, something that helped their mother get through some tough times in her life, and then she passes that on to them.
Tracy, we're going to pause for a second and suggest maybe you take out your earbuds because they're making a clicking noise. They seem to be dying. Do you want to try that?
Oh, I sure can.
Yeah, we're having.
I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
Oh, don't apologize.
No problem at all. We're just afraid we're going to lose you.
How's that?
Okay, now you have to unmute, love.
Unmute.
There.
Okay. Better, hopefully?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, there you go.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry about that. All right.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, we just didn't want to lose you midway through. No
Yeah.
worries.
This is good. This is good stuff. So we don't want to lose it.
One minute.
No, I have to admit that I had COVID. Patti and I both had COVID last week. So when I was reading it, and I was, tucked up in bed with my hot lemonade. And when things got really dire for Tara, I did something I never do, which was jump to the end of the book to give myself some reassurance.
I chastised her for this.
But now then I saw that you wrote really a brilliant essay about the importance of telling messy family stories. And I would love to talk to you about why that is so important. And this story, gosh, there was a whole lot with this family. Everybody had a burden.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're all, again, I think comes out of surviving that childhood together. And unfortunately, they're just sort of stuck. They're still using some of those same coping skills they did that worked back then, but isn't working now. And so, they're all holding on to something. They're kind of hiding some things from each other, from the world. They each have a reason for that. But now it's really starting to, it's been getting in their way for quite a while. And it's kind of, her homecoming sort of brings a lot of this to the surface, and they have to really sort of start to work through all of this if they're ever going to move forward in their lives and as a family together.
But the Brennans were a messy family too, right?
They were. They had a whole different kind of mess. But yes, they were dealing with different issues and very different background. The Brennans kind of had a sense of security, that stability of family and some financial security, and that was really missing for the Connollys. So they're kind of dealing with a whole different ball of wax there.
So I want to talk about the three siblings. But first I want to tap back to how interesting it is that you and I both used a fairy tale to bind our stories together. And I think that's such an Irish thing to do.
Yes.
Right. I think that I have a novel I wrote a long time ago called When Light Breaks, and I used the legend or the myth or the fairy tale of the Clawder Ring to bind that one together. And I think there's just something really powerful about blending. So I when I started reading about Finn McCool in your novel, I was like, here we go. This is awesome.
I had the same thought when I read Flora Lee. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. It's a very, like I said, I think it's a very Irish thing to do, to use that to bind things together. So there's three siblings. There's Tara and Eddie and Geraldine. And then, of course, there's Eddie's young son, Connor, and they're all under one roof. And they are all holding tight to interlocking secrets. And we know you have a background in psychology. We talked about it in your intro. So I want to know how you use that background in psychology, but how tricky was it for you to find a way for this family to kind of break through those secrets and grudges and inability to communicate? Because you did it with such grace and compassion, and that's not always the way we break free.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Certainly my background in that field is a part of all of everything I write. It really is. And it's not based on any one person or family, but I saw so many instances where people had the best of intentions, families that they loved each other so much, but they were just they lacked certain skills, or they were just kind of stuck. And as an outsider, it's easy to think, boy, if you guys just communicated, all of this, but for various reasons, it's just so not that simple for them. So I certainly draw on so much of that. But I think the key is, again, being an outsider in those situations. If people would, it's obvious if they would allow themselves to be sort of vulnerable. Geraldine, for instance, is so afraid of making mistakes. And if she does she doesn't want anyone to know about them. And so it's just being willing to actually be vulnerable and admit that you have made those mistakes. And but that's so much harder said than done for a lot of people.
Yeah. For sure. Okay, so we have to talk about Detective Brian Nolan. So he has his own family trauma, but right from the start, we sense that he's a decent man. He's just faced with some really impossible choices. And so the question here is, how hard was it for you to resist letting him save Tara?
Yeah, he was tricky in that sense. I landed on him kind of early, and I loved the idea of this just very decent guy that, does a good job and very ethical, but there's just sort of been this one situation that bothers him. It has bothered him for some time. But, that's tricky because he is a cop and there's that power imbalance, and you have to be careful there, and you don't want Tara to be at a disadvantage all the time. So I definitely wanted her to kind of be her own hero, so to speak. And for him I support that. But I thought that was important, especially if they were going to have a chance, possibly. She needs to be the one to figure herself out. So
Yeah, for sure.
Well, like I always say, as novelists, I think we are pretend, and in your case, real psychotherapists. So, right, like trying to figure out what their motivation is. Can I have them help them save them? What is their secret? Literally, we are psychotherapists. But I want to talk. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, you're 100% right. Yeah, and I'm not licensed. I worked in that world for so long that you definitely start to see those patterns. Yeah,
you can use them. I want to talk about the setting a little bit. It's set in Westchester County, New York, a place people associate with affluent commuter communities. But Portchester, where your previous novel, We Are the Brennans, was also set, is a working class community. So how important is that setting to the Connollys and to the Brennans, for that matter?
Well, Brennan's was nearby, but it was a slightly more affluent area. But it's close. But I definitely wanted the Connollys to find kind of just a little bit more diverse area, diverse neighborhood. And Portchester is that way. It's been there a long time. It's always been kind of the gateway to New England. And there has been some transformation, but not fully. And it is quite a diverse area. So it seemed a perfect setup for this family that lives there, but in some ways really can't afford to. And they're sort of like in that situation. A lot of people in our country are in a time where they could sell their house for a decent amount of money, but they couldn't then afford to buy something else and stay in that area. So it all seemed like a good background and history for this crew, for sure.
Well, the setting comes alive. You can feel it. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we also cannot resist asking you about Connor, the youngest member of the clan who loves baseball and Legos and whose existence has helped Tara endure 18 months in prison. So can you talk to us a little bit about Connor and how important he is to this story?
Yeah, these guys were dealing with such heavy stuff, and they love each other, and there's a lot of warmth, but he felt like such a natural addition to the family, just a bright spot. A lot of hope there. And coming back into facing all the obstacles that she's facing, I loved the idea that she had this very, bright spot, close connection to this nephew, that they could share a lot. And he would be kind of motivation for her when things got super hard. So I had a lot of fun. He was one of my favorite parts of writing this. And I thought he brought a lot of, with his little jokes, I thought he brought a lot of, just lightness to it all.
Well, and speaking of that, how about the idea of telling a joke when emotions run high? Where did that come from?
Well, I think it was just early on when I wanted them to, I was just looking for ways to really solidify our connection. And, they kind of make this deal. I'm not giving much away. When she comes out of prison, she's smoking. And so he doesn't like that. He's heard it's unhealthy, of course. And so they kind of make a deal. All right, she says, I'll stop, but when I have a craving, I'm going to need a joke. So that kind of becomes his little mission to collect jokes. And when she needs one, he's able to pull one out for her, and it's, I think that kind of laughter or, that connection just in hard times can just shift the energy, and so that's what I was looking for her.
I have to tell you, it shifted my energy when I was down with COVID. I would read one of those jokes and I go, I have a reason to
I feel like you need to pull out the book right now and read us one.
I know. No, I'm really much better. Okay, let's talk a little bit.
Research. That was fun research.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Irish stuff because my maiden name is Hogan, by the way, and Patti's a Callahan, and so are you from Irish background? Is that something that's, or you just randomly thought, I think I'll write about Irish people?
Two
No.
novels about Irish families.
Yeah. No, very much in my background. My dad was from Ireland. He's from County Down in Ireland.
Oh,
wow.
And I have massive family over there. I've been there many, many times. I was there last year. I hope to be there again next year. And they've got lots of family, Irish family in New York too, mostly Irish. There's almost nothing else in there except Irish. So I definitely come from that background. And when I started to write, it was just such a natural place to go, especially in New York, where I grew up and knew the area well and had family all over. So it's very comfortable for me.
Yeah.
So you're first generation.
Yeah, my dad's side, I'm first generation. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm second
You
generation.
get a passport.
On my dad's side. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I can get a passport.
You can, Captain.
Really?
Yeah,
A second? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Unless they find out about my criminal background.
Well, I mean, we've buried that. We have buried that so deep, so far. There's no way they're finding it.
Underneath
Anyway.
all the friends and fiction entries on Google now.
Exactly.
Oh, if they find out about that phone scamming I did when I was a starving college kid, it's all over.
Oh my God.
Or
You know the one when you would put the payphone thing next to the other payphone and put money in one?
Oh my gosh.
If the FBI is watching, I think the statute's run out. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
The FBI is still looking for you for that violent crime.
I write under a pseudonym. I'll never forget the first time I wrote, I write under a pseudonym, and my father, God love him, said one day, what did you say your alias is? I said, Dad, aliases are for criminal. I have a nom de plume. And by the way, it's the name of your grandchildren. So little helpful hint there. All right, Tracy, you've been an amazing guest. We've loved talking to you. And we loved the Connollys of County Down. What a treat of a story. Before we let you go, and the Brennans, can you tell everybody where they can find you online and on tour?
Online, it's tracylang.com. And I'm fairly active on Instagram, Tracy_Lang, easy to find. And honestly, I've got some podcasts and some local book clubs lined up. But other than my book launch in a local bookstore here, I don't have anything set up right now. Especially during summer, people are so busy and they're out enjoying life and all of that. Yeah. So, anything that's set up will end up on my website. So,
well, people can look for you online then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tracy.
It's so good to see you.
Thanks so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. So next up, we have our second guest of the evening, Amy Runyan. So let's find out a little bit about her.
Yeah, Amy has been honored as a Historical Novel Society Editor's Choice Selection, as a 3-time finalist for the Colorado Book Awards, and as a nominee for the Rocky Mountain Fiction Writer of the Year. She's also a proud member of the Tall Poppy Writers, Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers, Pikes Peak Writers, and the Women's Fiction Writers Association.
God, Amy, you have like a part-time job doing writers
organizations.
Groups.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right, Amy lives in Colorado with her husband and 2 children. Her new book, A Bakery in Paris, was released earlier this month, and her contemporary women's fiction debut, The Memory of Lavender and Sage, will be released in early 2024.
We are excited to talk to her about both books tonight. So Sean, can you please bring Amy on?
Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
So great to be here.
Oh,
Thanks,
we
Amy.
are
Great to
so
see
happy
you.
to have you. So, Amy, A Bakery in Paris tells 2 stories set in 2 different time periods we don't read about quite as frequently. So you have one time period in the late 19th century, and then the other one is the year just after World War II. So in 1870, we meet Lisette, who was born in the lap of luxury, but gives all of that up to join in the fight for a Paris of the people, opening a small bakery to feed an impoverished neighborhood during the Siege of Paris, to the backdrop of the Franco-Prussian War. And then 76 years later, in 1946, we meet 19-year-old Micheline, who, after the death of her father and the disappearance of her mother, is struggling with raising her two younger sisters. So she's thrust into a prestigious baking academy. She desperately searches for her mother, and she meets a man named Laurent, who might just change her future. So that is what the book is about. But Amy, can you talk to us a little bit about what A Bakery in Paris is really about?
Well, I mean, obviously, it has a lot to do with Paris and its upheaval. Because Paris is such an iconic city, I wanted to talk about two of these kind of lesser discussed periods in its history. The siege of Paris that led to the Paris Commune is really one of the most pivotal parts in Parisian history in the last 200 years. We talk ad nauseum about the French Revolution being the end of the French monarchy, but we had a monarchy. They had a monarchy again 12 years later. And so when the people rose up after the defeat of when the French were defeated by the Prussians in the Franco-Prussian War, the people of Paris in particular had it, because we have to remember Paris is a walled city and you couldn't get in or out of the city. People were starving. Orders were given to eat horses and to kill zoo animals. It was horrific. It was absolutely horrific. And so the people rose up after the defeat of the French. And they said, we want to govern ourselves because you're not doing that great of a job. We'll take care of this ourselves. And they managed reasonably successfully for 2 months, but then they were set down really violently when the military regrouped. They were set down very violently, to the point where even the people who were not sympathetic with the cause of the Paris Commune said that the government went too far. And the result of which is that France never had a monarchy ever again. So this really was the death of the French monarchy, and it's not lauded to the degree I think it should be. We talk about the French Revolution and the smaller revolution of 1848, which is the theme of Les Miserables, which you'll see right there. Boop, there's Les Mis right there. And I pitched the book as Les Mis meet Chocolat, and that's where the Les Mis part comes up. It's the people at the barricades with their own bare hands defending their city, and the right of self-sovereignty and the right to govern themselves. And I thought it was a moment that deserved to be celebrated in the course of a novel. But then I thought that a way to kind of transition my readers who are used to my World War I and World War II book was to talk about the post-war and the healing after World War II, because so many books, and my books are just as guilty of this, is, it's like, oh, some plucky French heroine comes in. She's probably a spy. She day kills a few Nazis, and everybody lives, the Nazis go home and everybody lives happily ever after. And we don't often in books discuss the price that even the victors have to pay in war. And that's what I wanted to do with Micheline's timeline. And I thought the two stories actually fed really well off each other.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm fascinated by how many different places you have chosen to set books. And I say the same thing about myself. I said, if I could just pick one time period, first 1838 Savannah, then 1952 England, it'd be a lot easier if I could just, pick a time and a place. But in Daughters of the Night Sky, we're in World War II Russia, and Across the Winding River and the School for German Brides, you take us to Germany. In your Daughters of New France series, we are set in Canada. And you have dipped into France briefly with Girls on the Line. So what made you come back to France again, aside from wanting to return to a city that's, a country that's amazing? And how did you make that uniquely French setting come alive?
Well, I have a master's degree in French. It is my passion. It was my academics. Yes. And, and that's kind of how my first two books that are set in Canada, it's French Canada. So they are, and they start out in France. So there's a French connection to a lot of my books, actually. Even Daughters of the Night Sky, she ends up in France at the very end. And that's not too big of a spoiler, I promise.
No.
But yeah, and I was kicking around ideas for a book. This is early 2020, and I was dating a historian, and he said, "Amy, you've got a master's in French. Why don't you write about the Paris Commune?" And I said, "You know what, historian boyfriend, you're very smart. That's a great idea." And so everything, kind of germinated. And I ended up writing The School for German Brides first. But then I'm like, I had the proposal all ready to go, and I was really excited about it. And my editor jumped on it. And we got a little bit of a spoiler. I ended up marrying said historian, and we got the news about the book deal on our honeymoon.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
Oh, I'm so glad we asked that. That's amazing.
So cute. I love it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, since that sense of place plays such a huge role in your novels, and you've visited so many places that you've written about, is there a place you're dying to write about next and that you're eager to return to or visit?
Well, this is really my love letter to Paris, and my next historical book is called Mademoiselle Eiffel, and it also takes place in Paris. So I got to do research. I got to go to Paris twice after not going for 12 years. Wow. I got to go to Paris twice in the course of like 9 months.
Wow.
So that was very exciting, very exciting. And I got to do research in the Musée d'Orsay. I got to walk through the Grand Gallery while it was empty. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. But I got to do archival research there. And so I got to double dip for 2 books, which was wonderful. And it makes me understand why writers who have a better level of focus than I do actually specialize in things, because it is great to be able to use it more than once. But my first contemporary book is called The Memory of Lavender and Sage. And you mentioned that during the intro, but it's my love letter to Provence, which is where I lived when I was a French student, when I was studying French at the Institut Américain Universitaire back 10 million years ago when I was in college. And it was an amazing place. And it's so different from Paris, but still French, but it has its own unique culture. And I wanted to write a book that celebrated that. And, it kind of has the typical women's fiction, woman finding herself, and an emotional journey, but it also is a treatise about the life in French villages and how that lifestyle is dying because there's a brain drain. Everybody's going off to the cities because that's where the jobs are, and you can't blame them for sure. But it really is kind of a celebration of that and how to keep that life from dying out entirely. So that's my first women's fiction that'll be coming out in February.
Oh, so exciting.
Well, you sort of teed me up for my question. So can you tell us a little more? I mean, you've told us a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit more about The Memory of Lavender and Sage?
Yeah, it is set. It's actually, modern day book. So that was new for me. And it's about Tempesta Luddington, who she's a food critic in New York. And she comes from a really affluent family, but her mother was kind of always the outsider because she was an immigrant from France. And, her parents met while her dad was on vacation, whirlwind romance, never accepted by their posh family. And sadly, Tempesta's mother dies when Tempesta is quite young, about 13. And she's never encouraged to ask questions about her mother. And so when her father passes away some years later, when Tempesta is 28, so a young, kind of entering, leaving the early adult phase, she decides to use the little inheritance from her mother to go visit where her mom grew up. And she learns a lot about herself and a lot about, gets a lot of questions answered about the life that she had or that her mother had before she became a wife and a mother, and uncovers some family secrets and some stuff about herself. And it really is kind of an exploration of found family, for one, and reconnecting with the family that she always felt estranged from.
Oh, wow.
I love that. Okay, so after writing so many historical novels, how different was it to, delve into the world of contemporary fiction? And what made you decide to make that switch?
It was hard. I'm not going to lie. I rewrote that book 3 times because, you can't just throw in an explosion and keep the pace going. It's all, character development and internal growth. And it's so hard. So those of you who write history, contemporary women's fiction, you're the real heroes because that is so hard. It is so hard because, and you don't have the structure of history to guide you along. And, in a bakery in Paris, because I'm dealing with post-World War II, we don't have the structure. I don't have to worry about, well, this battle happened then.
Yeah.
And this thing happened then. So it is a little bit more of that. And so it made it an easier transition, perhaps, because it does feel more like a contemporary women's fiction because it is character-driven and not driven by external events or shaped by external events. Right. But and I decided that I wanted to do that just to expand myself as an artist because I want to, put my fingers in a lot of different pies. I want to write in so many different genres. just kind of, fantasy, what have you. I would love to kind of, try all of it. We get one spin around on this globe and I want to write a lot of different stuff.
So I love that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay. So, so you sort of answered this, but this is something that you would do again, the contemporary world?
Yeah, I'm actually going to probably start writing my next contemporary because I got a 2-book contract from the good folks at Harper Muse. And I will probably start delving into my second contemporary next week or the week after.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot wait to read The Memory of Lavender and Sage. It's exciting.
Yeah,
I love your historical novels, and I know it's going to be great. Yeah.
Okay, now going back to what we're talking about tonight, A Bakery in Paris, you have this gorgeous line in the novel. Sometimes food is simple nourishment for the body. Sometimes it is nourishment for the soul. Sometimes it is an apology. Yeah. Can you talk to us about that sentiment? And by the way, are you a cook?
I am indeed a cook. And so I'm actually doing baking videos because you'll see throughout the course of Lavender and Sage, there are lots of recipes thrown out, but they are kind of archaic classic recipes by Callahan, the granddaddy of all French pastry cooking. And they're hard to follow because put it in a hot oven. Well, what in the heck is a hot oven? 450 degrees. It's 450 degrees. But, so I'm doing more accessible recipes. If you go visit me on Instagram or Facebook, I do little teaser videos every Tuesday and direct everybody to my blog at my website, www.amykrunyan.com/blog. And you can get the step-by-step instructions. So yeah, I am a very passionate baker, passionate cook. And to go back to the sentiment, I think food is so much more than basic nourishment. Well, in the course of writing this book, when my then boyfriend, now husband, and I were not living together, I would come up to Estes Park and I would stay with his family on the weekends when I didn't have my children. And I would always bring a cake because it was my way of saying thank you, because they would take care of me. They gave me a place to stay. They fed me. They cooked wonderful food. And it was my way of saying thank you. And, it's just something that I've always felt is, it's my love language. And I wanted to give that to Micheline as well, because I think that food means so much in our daily lives. And even if it's something, French bread, we can't overstate the importance of French bread in the diet, especially in the 19th century. It was the staff of life. And access to a simple bakery was a lifeline for these people. Having a bakery in the neighborhood meant they didn't have to walk an hour every day to secure this staple of their diet. It was important. And so, just an apology. And well, it's something I do as a welcome home. And it's, baking a chocolate cheesecake is a gesture that lets my husband know I love him. And it's just
so sweet.
Yeah. I think that it is, it is a gesture that means so much more than just nourishing the body.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's so true.
My poor husband is probably never going to get a homemade chocolate cheesecake from me.
You could try.
But I do love him. I order him Caroline's cakes. I do know how to make fudge. That's true.
Yeah, I make a chocolate cheesecake about once every month, and we actually had a double layer chocolate cheesecake for our wedding cake, and I made it myself.
Nice.
Oh,
Amy.
Wow.
All these brides out here who have not made their own wedding cakes, sorry, you just been shaded.
I know,
Mhm.
man.
How did you convert those recipes that you included in the book?
Well, I found the transcription from like the original Carême. I actually found a translation of some of his original recipes. And so I just made them more readable, and I added in the notes from the characters so that they're not, because I know I love cooking, but if I see a recipe in a book, I often just skip over it and I'm like, I'll come back and cook that later. But I wanted it to be part of the narrative. And so I did what I could to condense it, because nobody needs a 4-page recipe. But then I added in the notes because I wanted it to feel like a living document, because it's not, the wonderful, the trope of, I found my great grandmother's mystical diary in a trunk and it's going to change the course of my life. No, it's a good luck omen, but it's a living document. Yeah. And because they're professional bakers, and I wanted it to be, the torch being passed instead of something a bit more mystical in that sense. And so one of my favorite parts is when Micheline, it's not a sacred tome, she starts writing in it herself. And I love that.
I love that.
That's amazing. I love that. Okay. So we have a lot of questions coming in for you live, but I had to ask you this one. So Mary Vasquez wants to know if you have a favorite film version of Les Mis.
A favorite film version? Well, I mean, if I'm going to watch a film version, the 10th anniversary edition of the musical with Michael Ball, and the lead actor is escaping me, but Michael Ball, who plays Marius, and Lea Salonga as Eponine. I love the musical version, and I've seen it on stage twice in London and San Francisco. But the Liam Neeson version, if you're gonna watch the original or the actual non-musical version, the Liam Neeson version is solid.
Oh, good to know.
I love that.
Great.
Awesome.
We also have Carrie Soderman asking if you have a favorite meal to eat while in France.
A favorite meal to eat while in France. Okay, one of the hardest questions I got asked on tour was, describe your favorite eating day in France, or the perfect. And so that answer took 5 minutes, and everybody went to a French bakery down the street after the thing. I'm not even kidding. Okay, so in my last time in France, I'll describe my favorite meal I had was at Le Ricamier. And I started off with a cheese souffle and a glass of really good red wine, and it was fabulous. And then dessert was a Grand Marnier souffle with a digestif liqueur and a cup of coffee. And it was incredible. And it was just fluffy and souffle. But it feels like you keep eating forever, but then all of a sudden you're very full. But it was so, so good.
Oh my God, it sounds so good. You're making me hungry.
I know, I'm starving, and this is not helping.
Oh my God,
I hear my
I know,
stomach
right?
growling over there.
I know. God, that sounds so good.
Yeah, I feel like they should have put a
cheese
label on
souffle.
here. Bring a baguette home with the book.
Yes, it should come with the
It's like,
baguette.
instead of like a
Which would be
trigger
nice.
warning, it's like appetite.
Be prepared. Yeah, exactly. Have baguette, good cheese, wine. There you go.
That is
I don't know.
so
I could
true.
eat a cheese
Exactly.
souffle for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm positive I could do that.
Now I want to cheese
A little bit of
souffle.
cayenne pepper.
I mean, come on.
Oh, sounds so good. All right, Amy, before we let you go, where can our viewers find you on the road and online in the coming weeks?
Well, I have just finished up my West Coast tour, so I don't have any more events planned that I'm aware of. That can always change if they do. My website, www.amykrunyan.com, will have all of that wonderful information, and I am all over Facebook and Instagram, fairly active there as well. I'm at Bookish Amy on Instagram and Amy K. Runyan on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter as well, though not as active. And every Tuesday, I will have a new recipe up for you. And so if you go to my blog or go to my socials, you can see the little teaser videos about that.
Oh, I'm going to make one.
So
I am.
cool.
I'm gonna make one.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm so
What are we
hungry right now.
What are
even
we making next,
thinking
Amy?
about it.
Gosh, the next recipe is going to be quiche Lorraine
Oh,
I
on the
love
blog. And my favorite one so far was Micheline's rose petal jam. I taught everybody how to make rose petal jam. I wish you guys, I was going to send you guys, I have like 12 jars of it in my fridge, but it wouldn't have shipped well. I was going to send it to you. But
Oh
I
my
couldn't.
gosh.
Well, what you did ship us was fabulous.
Yeah.
Pretty
I
sweet.
Well, you guys are so wonderful to have me. I wanted you to have just a small
Thank
token of my
you.
appreciation because you guys are so wonderful. And I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Oh,
She's
thank
gonna.
Thank you, Amy. You're the
I'm
best.
sorry that you all didn't get the
Amy.
packages we got. We got some amazing.
I know they were
spices
delightful.
and a
Yes.
spoon
My
and a
husband was like,
dish
"What is it different? Cinnamon? Is it?" And I was like, "It's just
Well,
it's fine. It's just cinnamon."
Pensies, I'm telling you, anybody who's serious about baking, just get yourself gift cards at Pensies because their stuff is so fresh and so good. And it's like the first key to really good baking or cooking is use brand new spices. Like buy them in small quantities or use them up because the spices we all have in our drawers that are 2 years old have no flavor left.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
What if they're like 7 years old?
Well, asking for a friend.
What if you
asking
got
for
them for
somebody-
wedding gifts? Are they still good?
Just asking for someone who hasn't cleaned out their spice cabinet. I'm just wondering.
I have nutmeg. I have like actual like nutmegs in the nut form in my drawer that are probably older than my kids, but they're fresh. I freshly grate it, so I still think it has some good flavor left.
Oh, I think
yeah.
so. I think so.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, Amy, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank
It was so nice
you.
to chat with you. It was so nice to think about all the food we can eat, like in celebration of Paris. And we hope that everyone out there will check out A Bakery in Paris out now. So thank you so much for being with us, Amy.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Amy.
It's good to see
Okay,
you.
everybody, don't forget that you can find all of our back episodes on YouTube. And please make sure to check out our podcast, our book club, our tour dates, our newsletter, and more, all on friendsandfiction.com. We're going to be back next week with Elizabeth Acevedo to discuss her novel Family Lore, which is this month's Good Morning America pick. And we have such a fun episode in store for you. We can't wait. And by the way, hang around because we're going to have a little after show afterwards. So we'll see you next week, but we'll see you right back here in, the blink of an eye.
Good night.
Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here. Well, hello, ladies. Welcome.
Hello.
That was a fun show tonight.
It was.
So
Oh my
fun.
gosh.
They were great.
To go
guys.
from Ireland to New York to Paris
Yeah.
to Provence.
Just
like,
split
she's-
around.
I know. If we could just go
Yeah.
visit each place we talk about.
I know. I
But
know.
be
I feel
back
like
in
we
our
took a
bed
little
by 9.
tour.
Like-
That'd be nice. Well, I will tell you, talking to Amy made my mouth water. So she also had this line in one of the book's recipes that says, and I meant to mention that in the book, all of the recipes have little kind of thoughts and asides from the characters. So it's cool. It's like a little piece of personality poured into the recipes too. But she has a line that says, when things look hopeless, it often takes a small change to set things to right. Is there a comfort food in your life that makes things feel right again? Maybe something you made for your family or something that your parents or grandparents made for you? How about you, Patti?
Gosh, all these things are flooding back, but there is nothing more comforting. And I will even make it for myself if I'm, say, home alone sick with a sickness. And that is a grilled cheese sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I made it for my kids when they were sick. I make it for myself. And I don't eat them on the whole. Like, I don't make them for lunch or something. But when I don't feel well, I just love a good grilled cheese sandwich.
It is
It's a
the
comfort
best.
food. How about you, MKA?
Well, my mother and grandmother were great home cooks, and I like to cook too. And so I make pot roast, and
Oh, I love pot roast.
that's a favorite cold weather thing in our family. And I invariably make enough to give away. So we have a couple of bachelors in the neighborhood, and so when I make pot roast, I make enough to share with them. And
That's nice.
my grandkids love pot roast too. And I was asking Molly one night, I lost my daughter Katie about 18 months ago. And I said, Molly, what would you like me to make that your mom made for you that you loved? And she just always says pot roast.
Oh,
my gosh.
Pot roast it
I
is.
love that.
Pot
Pot roast.
roast it
I love
is.
Mhm.
You know what? I want your recipe. I don't think anybody wants my recipe for grilled cheese.
Yeah.
I would love your recipe.
Yeah, I'd love that recipe too, if you don't mind sharing, Kathy.
Happy to, yeah. I make it a
Yeah,
little bit different each time, but yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I would love that. I love a good pot roast in the winter. How about you, Kristy?
So this is actually like a timely question because my next book, Last Summer on Sunset Lane, has recipes in it for the very first time ever, which, you know, is kind of unlike me. Y'all know my chefing skills, but I'm not a terrible baker. And I actually used both of my grandmother's recipes in the book, throughout the course of the story. So they actually are in the book, but I think for me, my grandmother's oatmeal cookies are just like the greatest. I mean, she always had them when I was growing up. She always had, she would make the tubes of dough and then like keep them in the freezer. So like anytime, like if I was there after school, you know, she would just like make a few oatmeal cookies and like we always would eat these huge batches of them at the beach. And I don't know, they're just like comfort food. And so I worked on perfecting my recipe for them for over Christmas. They aren't as good as hers, but they're
now we need that recipe. Goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
All right, Kristin, what about you?
Speaking of baked things that kind of evoke family memories, my grandmother used to make these things called shadow squares, which were like blondies on the bottom with chocolate chips on top, and then a layer of brown sugar meringue on the top of it. And so like the top comes out crunchy and a little bit spongy, and then you've got like the chocolate chips that never quite melt. It's just, they were so good and they were so distinctly her that I miss her a lot, and that's something that whenever I make those, it brings her back to me. I mean, there's just something magical about being able to cook something or bake something that you associate so strongly with a person, and then you feel them again with you when you make that thing. So
do you feel like your cookies come out the same as hers?
Do mine, the shadow squares? No, she did a better job. But I can. I'm serious that way.
That's how I am. I'm like, well, that is good, but
I mean, but they're similar enough that I think like, okay, like she wouldn't throw them out if I give them to her, you know.
Hilarious. That's hilarious.
All right. Before we sign off for the night, I am wondering how about plans for Labor Day weekend? Does anyone have any plans? How about you, Kristy?
Well, I'm hoping that the storm doesn't mess them all up. But yes, so we have lots of plans. We have lots of out of town friends coming in. We have a big like Labor Day dance on September 2nd. So I'm super excited about that, like a band and all of that. And then we're having a dinner with lots of friends and the kids and everybody on Friday night, which we kind of do every Friday in the summer. But I missed a lot of them because I was on tour this year. So it'll be good to kind of get to do that. And
any bingo?
No bingo this weekend, unfortunately. Yeah, so last bingo was last Tuesday. Yeah, it was jackpot, and honestly, we always win. We never win during the year. We always win jackpot. We didn't win this year. We were like, oh, what's happening?
Oh man. How about you, Patti?
Yeah, been watching this storm, and I think it's going to be okay. But I've been thinking about all of you in Florida and Georgia. I not wasted a lot of time, but I spent a lot of time today, like watching the cone, watching it go across. But I think it'll be gone by this weekend. So this weekend, the whole family is gathering in South Carolina because it is my husband's big birthday. It's one of the big birthdays. It's his 40th. I'm kidding. It's his 41st. I married someone 2 decades younger than me. No. So we're having a big family party for my husband's birthday. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited to kind of say goodbye to summer in a beautiful way. And I'm actually really looking forward to the fall. Unlike you, Kristy, I know this is your favorite season. I like the heat this summer has
fall too. It has been so
crazy. So I am ready to enjoy the last weekend of summer, get out on a kayak, enjoy it, and then move on. So how about you two?
And what, Mary Kay, how about you? I know you've got
we have
some stuff coming up. No, but you've got some big stuff coming up soon.
I have no plans because I'm working, trying to finish the freaking book before I go out on tour.
That
You know,
one.
we've got so much stuff coming up. We've got a really nice pre-order offer with Eagle Eye Books in Decatur. Folks can get a really cute Christmas tree ornament that looks like the Spammy the Camper in Bright Lights Big Christmas. The Atlanta launch is Saturday, September 23rd, with book sales by Foxtail Books. People can go to their website or mine to buy books. And then we are off and running. Oh, we're going to have a fun, really fun launch in at my friend Clay's motel, as he calls it. It's an inn in Buena Vista, Georgia. And he has been collecting Christmas trees, artificial Christmas trees, because the plot of the book has to do with a family that owns a Christmas tree lot, and they set up a shop in Greenwich Village at Christmas. And so Clay has been going to yard sales and flea markets and buying up all these Christmas trees. So he's going to turn the front porch of his inn into a Christmas tree lot. And I've had this big sign made. Maybe people can see it on, if they look on my social media, so you can see that. And there's a lot going on. So no, this weekend I'm just going to be getting ready and doing all that. I think Tom's going to cook some ribs, maybe.
That sounds great. Okay, so if people want to find out about all the stuff you have going on, Kathy, since your book's coming out in just a few weeks, they should follow you on your socials and get signed up for your newsletter, and they can have
they should. And we've got
all the details.
Yeah,
you've got some sold out events already, so people need to.
I know. And then we've got the big launch in Maryland. We're so excited. We're going to all be together again. The band's getting back together again.
Oh.
All right.
And what about you, Kristin? What are you doing?
You know what? Honestly, we were so worried that the storm was going to come this way that I have not even thought through to the weekend because, honestly, all of my brain space the last few days was just dedicated to watching the local NBC station to see which way the storm was going.
It's very taxing.
Yeah, I'm exhausted, but I'm sure we'll get up to some fun stuff. So it'll be great. But everyone, that is it for us for tonight. We are excited to see you all back here next week. So make sure to check out friendsandfiction.com for links to our old episode and lots more. Make sure to join us every Wednesday night at 7, and we will see you back here next Wednesday at 7. Good night, everybody.
Have a great Labor Day weekend.
Good night.
Happy Labor Day.